Having looked at pharaohs, let's look at someone slightly more common. And when I say slightly, I mean very slightly. This is a scribe. And scribes would have been a rare commodity in ancient Egypt. Current estimates are that maybe 1% of the population could read and write. Perhaps I've seen estimates as high as 3%, maybe 5%. But very little of the population can do that. And this makes these people valuable, but also very powerful, because a scribe could sit there and go, the pharaoh tells him, hey, let's outlaw this practice. And the scribe writes, let's have Taco Tuesday. And that's what becomes law. The pharaoh won't know unless someone describes it to him or explains it to him. And obviously, they're not going to make changes that are that dramatic, but they could make those subtle changes that can completely change the interpretation of a ruling or law. It makes them incredibly powerful. And here we see a painted statue. Now, most statues in the ancient world would be painted very similarly to this. The reason we see stone so often without paint is because often the dealers who find it will wipe that paint off before selling it, because it looks a lot cleaner and a lot more finished, a lot more attractive without the paint than with, because of course the paint chips and becomes a significant issue. The paint, by the way, is probably pigment mixed with honey, orchid resin, or egg, and water. That honey, orchid resin, or egg acts as a binder. It's why the paint is still there, or at least some of it is still there. The scribe is shown doing his thing, writing. And that is going to be symbolic of this person. It's the thing they are the most proud of. After all, we do the same thing today with tombstones and how we're buried and how people deal with our bodies all the time. He's seated on the ground. This would have been very common in ancient Egypt. They don't have a lot of furniture because wood is stupidly expensive. It all has to be imported. Remember, they live in a desert. And so seated, they have sort of a floor culture. They tend to sit on the floor on a regular basis, and that's what we're seeing. We're also seeing a very naturalistic body. There is no real idealism here, at least not what we would pick out as idealism, but I would argue that there is. Because he does have a bit of a belly. He does have some extra body fat. And this would be symbolic of a comfortable life, wealthy status, of importance, because of course he's a scribe. The idealism, or the less idealism that we see in a sculpture, generally indicates a lower social status beneath the pharaoh. Well, everyone is beneath the pharaoh. But he's trying to show that he had money, that he had resources without holding a big pile of gold, because that's going to be awkward and generally read as, well, not humble, rather prideful, and rather problematic. We also get a great sense of a figure that is alert, that has a personality. The eyes are inlaid, as we've seen in Mesopotamia and elsewhere. And here they're using glass and rock crystal to do that inlay, to create something that is incredibly realistic to them. They would have looked very much like this person. And so what we get is a very powerful image of this scribe. We can tell his socioeconomic status. We can tell what he did and what he's proud of. And we get this sense of someone who is always ready to write, always ready to do his duty, which would have been very important in ancient Egypt.